You know, the advantage of being a president and also being old is that you can decide to sit down while you're addressing people. So I take advantage of that and I'll address you while sitting down, because I expect also to have a number of questions from all over the world. So clearly, if I were to stand up, my legs will get shorter by the time I finish. Excellency, the First Lady of Malawi, Mr. Deval Patrick, Governor of the State of Massachusetts, Dr. Robert Brown, President of the Boston University, and Mrs. Brown, Ambassador Charles Stith, Director of the African Presidential Archives and Research Center, and Mrs. Stith, Honorable Ministers from Malawi, distinguished university faculty members. I also welcome this afternoon the Vice Chancellors of the University of Ghana and Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, where I think we are hooked this morning. Also the principals of the Elizabeth City College in North Carolina and Morehouse in Georgia, whom also I understand are hooked to this program. And of course, the students of Boston University and the other universities that are participating in this program. I also like to take advantage to thank the United States USAID for supporting this program and for being a part of this process. We thank them very much. I am delighted to be with you today on this very important forum and for us to share the vision of a new Africa. Let me also thank Mr. Deval Patrick, the Governor of the State of Massachusetts, for warmly welcoming us last night. I'm grateful to Ambassador Charles Stith, Executive Director of the African Presidential Archives and Research Center, for taking this initiative. It has taken a long time and a lot of persistence for him to manage to bring me here, because I've been on the road for the whole month of September, but still I managed to be here. So I'm grateful that you did, because being in Boston is like being in Malawi, because the people are very friendly. In Malawi, we are the warm heart of Africa. I bring to you warm and fraternal greetings from the people of Malawi and also from the people of Africa. I'm here today to discuss with you not the Africa of calamities and endemic poverty, but a new Africa of hope and opportunities. I want to discuss with you not widespread food shortages, hunger, and malnutrition, but how Africa can produce enough food to feed its people as well as the rest of the world. I brought to you today the message of a new Africa, the Africa of a new beginning. I brought to you news that Africa has shifted from Afro-pessimism to Afro-optimism. I'm saying this because hitherto the Africa you have been made to know is the Africa of insensate calamities, the Africa of endemic diseases such as HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, the Africa where many children die before the age of 5 years, the Africa of conflicts, of terrorism, of piracy, of corruption, and indeed the Africa of underdevelopment. Yes, this is Africa you have been made to know, and this Africa exists. But I want you now to begin to know a new Africa. This is the Africa of new hopes, new opportunities, Africa of increased investment opportunities, the Africa where the above diseases are being brought under control, and infant mortality is significantly reducing. The Africa where extreme poverty is being tackled head-on. The Africa's war on these and other calamities is on and is being won. Yes, this is the Africa I want you to know, because that Africa also exists. It is true that Africa and the rest of the world face several challenges in the quest to improve the lives and welfare of humanity. These challenges include wars, conflicts, terrorism, food shortages, escalating food prices, imbalances in global trade and prosperity, inequities in investment and development opportunities, climate change and environmental degradation, and endemic diseases such as HIV and AIDS. These problems are real, and they do retard progress, and we have to tackle them. There's now an emerging consensus that one of the biggest challenges facing humanity is how to feed over 9 billion people in the world today. In Africa, the challenge is also how to reduce extreme poverty and hunger facing millions of people. Therefore, I have chosen to introduce to you today the African food basket, which are innovations, interventions, and strategic partnerships. This is a mega investment project that will involve all African countries and envisage the purchase of tractors, agricultural implements, irrigation equipment, fertilizers, manures, seeds, cement for dam construction, water pumps, pipes, trucks for transportation. When implemented, this will create thousands and thousands of jobs and self-employment business opportunities at various levels. I will start by stating that upon the assumption of the African Union chairmanship during the 14th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union that was held in Addis Ababa early this year, I proposed, and the African heads of state unanimously agreed, that within a period of 5 years, Africa must be able to feed itself. I also proposed that after that period, no child in Africa should die of hunger, starvation, or malnutrition. I persuaded the African governments to place the highest priority on agriculture and food security as a basis for economic transformation and change. They agreed that the continent of Africa should be turned into an African food basket through specific innovations, interventions, and strategic partnerships. They also agreed that Africa should be able to supply food to the rest of the world. The rationale is that I'm convinced that if African governments could invest enough or allocate enough budgetary resources in agriculture, the continent could produce enough food for all. Therefore, the consensus was that the next 2 to 3 years, sustainable growth and development in African countries will be determined by what happens in the agricultural sector. The other rationale was that presently only 10% of arable land in Africa is under cultivation. In other words, Africa has vast unutilized land, 90% of land that could be brought to produce more food for Africa and the rest of the world. But this is not all. There is also evidence by the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, of the United Nations, that shows that sub-Saharan African countries lose about 40% of their food after harvest. You can imagine that. After you have brought the food into your home, you lose 40%. Now, in terms of bags, let's say bags of 50 kgs each, it means that out of every 100 bags, you lose 40 bags. You have only 60 bags that you use. And this is compared with less than 1% for North America, United States, and Southeast Asia. Therefore, I firmly believe that if this amount of food that we are losing now were to be saved, the food situation in Africa would significantly improve, even without growing one more hectare of land for food. In addition, we have evidence of success stories in food self-sufficiency in Africa, and of countries that are able to produce enough food to feed their people. These include Egypt, Sudan, Malawi, South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Morocco, Algeria, and Cameroon, to name only a few. The point we are making is that it is possible for people to produce enough food to feed themselves. And indeed, at the Africa level, it's even that much possible. We are going to press on irrigation development. We have a lot of rivers, lakes, and swamps in Malawi and the rest of Africa that can be converted into, turned into food after irrigation. Presently, only 7% of the African arable land is irrigated. The potential of irrigation for Africa is therefore enormous, and it is estimated that we can bring up to 42 million hectares of land under irrigation within the next 5 years. In order to ensure sustainable food security, the African Union also decided on 3 other key priorities to spur development and to rescue people out of poverty. And these are not only agriculture and food security, but also transport and communications infrastructure, and energy development, as well as management of climate change. The African Food Basket Initiative is therefore a new focused approach that highlights agriculture and food security as the springboard for growth. It calls for Africa and all cooperating partners to focus on improving agriculture and food security in the next 5 years through brave innovations. The innovations that can be introduced are many, but here let me just mention a few. Firstly, the first proposal is to introduce subsidies to smallholder agricultural farmers. I know this is the bone of contention. The Washington Consensus says you stop all subsidies. And I'm saying, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, much of agriculture is done by small people, mainly women. A woman with a baby on her back, working until midday or past midday, no food, no water. Washington says they should not have subsidies. But that in the industrialized countries, with advanced, modernized agriculture, tractors, sometimes I understand even air-conditioned tractors, with stereo music, the Washington Consensus says those should have subsidies, but my poor African women should not. And I said, that's where we part ways. And I can tell you that subsidies have worked very well for Malawi, and they can work for other countries. It is impossible, those of you who know Africa, it's impossible to expect that these smallholder farmers can produce beyond subsistence without subsidies. Simply is not possible. But let me tell you, 2 weeks ago, some several women came to see me to thank me for what they've done. And they told me that for all their lives, on their small plots of land, they were never able to produce more than 2-3 bags of maize of 50 kgs. But after introducing the subsidies, one of them says, I have 15 bags of maize. Another one says, I have 17 bags of maize. Another one says, I have 20 bags of maize. Now, what does that mean? That means that they have now gone beyond subsistence. That means now they are able not only to feed themselves throughout the year, but to find surplus for marketing, and therefore their incomes improve. Now, can someone come under those circumstances and convince me that we need no subsidies? Can you be convinced that we don't need subsidies? I think we do. The second policy intervention, as I said, is through the investment in irrigation facilities. We are looking at a number of dams, earth dams, all over the place to enable smallholder farmers not only to irrigate their crops, but to feed their livestock and even to get drinking water. So we're having new irrigation initiatives, and we want them to be replicated throughout Africa. We'll use the experiences in countries such as Egypt, Libya, and Sudan that have managed to feed themselves even without rain in some areas for several years. So we believe this can be done, and we believe this will enhance the realization of the African Green Revolution. I've mentioned transport and communications earlier on because it's very important. It's important for the African food basket because we are going to produce a lot of food, and indeed, it doesn't make sense for you to produce food if you cannot transport it from the surplus areas to the deficit areas. So it makes a lot of sense. But that's also another area of investment where private sector can actually benefit. So we'll need new partnerships in the area of transport and infrastructure, particularly emphasizing the private sector. There are a lot of opportunities. I don't have details to say, though, but my statement, when you get it, you'll be able to find the details where these investments occur. Then in the area of energy development, I like to argue the case for energy as an important aspect of achieving and sustaining the African food basket. Here, we need to recognize that energy is fundamental in the development of not only agriculture, but industry, particularly agro-processing. And therefore, we would also be using energy as part of the package in promoting food security. We have also the issue of climate change. Africa is very severely affected by climate change. Sadly, Africa has not contributed to the global warming, but we are least able to protect ourselves. And therefore, as part of package of food security and overall development, we need to look at climate change, how we manage climate change, how we do afforestation programs, how we utilize rivers to ensure that water doesn't run through, how we make sure that we can conserve soil. There are areas like Ambassador Steve was telling us in Haiti, for instance, where because there are no trees, that's we learned when we were out there that because there are no trees, when the rain hits on the ground, it just washes away the entire soil. So right now, for instance, in Haiti, there's hardly any soil on which to grow anything. That is happening also in other parts of Africa. And we want to stop that, control the flow of water, control the flow of the loss of soil. And this will be one of the things in which the African food basket can be done. I believe we have the means, we have the technology, we have the expertise, we have also the experience in various countries, not only in Africa, but the rest of the world, to deal with this problem. Let me now turn to the issue of information and communications technology. During the past 20 years or so, the world has moved at a tremendous speed in communication and information technology. We have e-government, e-commerce, e-finance, e-banking, e-medicine, e-education. I don't know what is not e now. So therefore, it's important for Africa also to move e somewhere. And indeed, in terms of agriculture and food security, we need to know, we intend to use information and communication technology to find out what are the staple diets of many African countries, which countries eat what, and then see if some of those staple diets can be grown even in areas or countries where it's not a staple food for that country, but on an all-Africa basis. So we are looking at, through information and communication technology, we are looking at food security not at national level only, but also at sub-regional level, at African level. But beyond that, we want to look at food security at global level, because Africa cannot be happy if other parts of the world are suffering. And for your information, recently Malawi did send 200 metric tons of rice to Haiti, and we were able to do that. On the climate change, what we need, again, using information and communication technology, is for us to find out what are the best practices, how other countries have managed to control deforestation, have managed to control salination. You know, many countries are now facing, because of global warming, many islands around Africa and the rest of the world are threatened. Some of them might disappear. I was talking to a colleague from Maldives, and they were saying that if nothing is done to Maldives, 20 years from now, Maldives will disappear from the face of the earth. So it is a serious problem. It is a serious problem, and we need a response. And that's why Africa is quite concerned that although climate change has been recognized, the movement towards the solution of this crisis is not really as fast as it should be. The Copenhagen Conference on Climate Change was a failure, and we are saddened by that. We are looking forward to the Cancun. There will be Cancun meeting in December. On the same thing, we hope that the developed countries will come forward and have a concrete program, because a disaster anywhere in the part of the world is a disaster for all of us. So in order to have the African food basket, I have proposed and I've created what I call the strategic group of 17. We have picked up 17 African countries based on our knowledge of how they've managed food security and agriculture, to spearhead and to talk to the G8 and other countries on how best we can turn Africa into a food basket. These countries include Egypt, Sudan, Senegal, South Africa, Malawi, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, Ethiopia, Algeria, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Liberia, Cameroon, Mozambique, and Mali. We will be having a meeting at the summit level, also at the ministerial level, at the official level, and even at the private sector level, to say together what can we do to turn Africa into a food basket. And we'll also be linking with the G8 countries to tap on the L'Aquila initiative, where the G8 countries set aside 20 billion United States dollars for agriculture and food security. So, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot present the whole of my statement tonight because it will be a long one, and we are waiting to hear from comments and other questions from all over the world. But the truth is that Africa has the capability to feed itself, and has the capability to feed and contribute to the rest of the world's food security. And I must add that without food security, there's no other security you can make. Because imagine, can you send troops to Iraq? Can you send troops to Afghanistan? Can you send peacekeeping missions to Sudan without food? You can't. So food is strategic, even to maintain schools, to keep children in class.